What's going on? This be your boy DJ Anonymous with Sportsbizmusic, episode 5. And I got two special guests. I got AF Music and Dudda Dash, also known as Davinciix. What's going on, y'all?
How you doing, man?
All good here in Connecticut, man.
Yeah, man. Is it still snowing up there?
Actually, it's not snowing right now. It's actually a nice day out today, but you never know. Snow could come very soon.
Yeah, because I know y'all been in the snow for about, what? It was like a month or two, right?
Yeah, we had a pretty decent snowstorm probably like a couple weeks ago. But I mean, I'm looking outside right now. Pretty much all snow, pretty much melted. So, but that could change. Being in New England, 2 days from now it could, snow another 6 inches. So you never know.
Yeah. So just introduce ourselves. Tell the people a little bit about yourselves.
Yeah. So like I said, AF Music. And I'm the producer of the group Davinciix, also function as artist of the group as well. But I've been in music production for probably the past maybe 6-7 years. So I started early in college, really getting into recording, mixing, engineering. On that front, I'm pretty much all self-taught. But I'm a trained musician. So, I mean, since I was probably 8 or 9, and I took music lessons, I was musically trained. So I started off playing trumpet pretty early on, and I played in, jazz groups, I played in orchestras, so I always had a solid foundation for music. So breaking into, recording and producing was a little bit easier in the fact that I, already had a solid base for understanding musical arrangements and things of the sort. So, so the past, 3 or 4 years, we've just been really working on getting kind of a polished product out. And, we've been getting a little buzz here the past year or so. So we're just looking to build on that and hopefully show the world what we can do. So.
And I'm Dudda Dash. Make that known. A lot of people have a hard time pronouncing it. Dudda Dash. I'm what they call the spitter of the group. I do a lot of the rap and lyrical content. I put together some melodies. I've always been into music ever since I was young. Growing up, going to church and being in choir and whatnot, so I know how that works. So I'm able to put together melodies, but my heart is with rap and hip hop music. So I like to combine the two. And working with AF, he helps put the melodies together and put the instrumentals behind the track. So that's where I come from, the music background.
Okay, so when did y'all realize that music was like not only your passion but like your path?
So I think probably about 6 years ago. This is probably around the time when we started working together. Dash was working on a project separately. With a guy we still work with. His name's RT. He works out of a studio in Hartford, Connecticut. He primarily does a lot of our mastering. And he was working on a project with Dash. And a lot of it was, how much of that was like original content? Was it more like
half and half?
Yeah, so it was just like a culmination of different things that he was working on. And, so he pretty much had a project all set to go, and, kind of from that point, we were just interested in kind of developing some other sounds. I had just started getting into music production, so, we worked on a couple tracks together. Listening back to them now, I'm not all too impressed with the stuff that I was doing way back then, but, from that point, we kind of figured that, maybe we got something here, maybe, this is something we can grow into, like a really solid sound. So, from that point, we pretty much every month, every week we were working on something different, developing sound. And I think that for a lot of producers and a lot of artists, it's about finding a sound. And, music, there's niches in music. You hear a Drake track come on, you automatically know it's Drake.
Yeah.
Drake's very versatile, but, a lot of the really popular artists out now, that they have a sound that is unmistakable. Whether it's Migos, whether it's Travis Scott, whether it's Drake. I mean, these guys have a sound, and I think that's what a lot of their fan base comes from. So, rather than having 6 or 7 different things you're good at, I mean, finding a sound that really resonates with you and your music, I think is what's going to draw attraction. So, I mean, it probably took us a couple years to really develop a sound that we think is something that people will gravitate to and something that people will appreciate. So, and we're still working on our craft to this day. I mean, that never stops, but I think we're at a point where we've developed enough skills in writing and producing, together that, we can pretty much record something and know it's going to be a solid product. So,
So did y'all have any influences growing up? Like, different artists that y'all used to listen to when y'all was younger?
Growing up, for me, pretty much, what's hip-hop music? Hip-hop music, of course, the Jay-Z's, Nas, Eminem, all the greats, of course, but I also was into R&B, Usher, who else back then? There's a bunch of R&B artists. I can't really think of any right now, but Usher, and then the hip-hop greats. But as far as other genres, I wasn't really into many other genres except, growing up in church and gospel music. But other than that, it was always hip-hop and R&B for me. I'm pretty sure AF had other lanes that he was into, which you can see in our music. We talk about our music that it's not just hip-hop and R&B.
The reason, before I go to AF, the reason why I asked because one of the tracks I listened to was Dead Prayers. And, when I first now I listen to it, but when I first seen the title, I everybody know about Jay-Z and Nas, with the Dead President songs and stuff like that. And when I listened to the song, to me it kind of had that feel, but with the with AF, he comes in, with the melodies and stuff like that. Cause coming from the East Coast, cause a lot of people, listen to Jay-Z, Biggie, Nas, listen to different artists from, from the region, but listen to y'all music, before we recorded the podcast, the reason why I asked, cause y'all sound is different, it's top 100 sound, and it could be I don't want to say pop, cause it's not pop. It's you still get that lyrical, you still get that R&B vibe. That's why I asked, where y'all get that sound from, because it's so unique,
Yeah. So, I mean, like Dash said, I mean, we definitely were, always try and keep our influences to people who paved the way in music. So people like Jay-Z, people like Kanye West, people like Nas. So, I mean, Dead Prez is obviously an iconic hip-hop track.
Yes.
I mean, that's an unmistakable hip-hop track. It's arguably one of Jay-Z's most iconic recordings. And, just kind of a way for us to pay homage to, some old hip-hop and, people who are true hip-hop heads, can appreciate something like that. So as far as that track goes, I mean, I found the original sample that track was produced from, and I'm pretty sure, I think Just Blaze produced their president. It could be wrong.
I think it was Just Blaze,
but so I found the original sample, and I just chopped up the sample in my own kind of way, and I wanted to build a little bit different of a sound to it. And I've got my own unique type of sound. I gravitate towards certain sounds, so it just ended up being something that worked out, really well sonically. And then I sent it to Dash, and obviously, being such a great lyricist, I mean, he wrote something in a day, and we recorded it. We loved the way it sounded, so we decided that we would release that, have it on our SoundCloud, post a little snip on our Instagram. You know, that way people who, you know, pull up our pages, you know, can see that, you know, while we do have this unique sound, you know, at heart we still really want to pay homage to, you know, real hip hop influences and things like that. So,
As a producer, did you have any did you look up into any other producers growing up, like the Dre's, the Pharrells, things like that, people like that?
yeah. I mean, definitely. I mean, when I first started producing, I was always on YouTube watching producer videos. So videos from, you know, Pharrell's NERD days. You know, a big influence of mine in those times was Ryan Leslie. I mean, he kind of started that whole phase of putting up producer videos of him in the studio, you know, starting with an instrument and then him adding on various instruments just to show how he produced his music. So, and then people like Just Blaze, and you know, currently, you know, a lot of the producers out now that are pretty, you know, popular. And 40 is definitely a big influence of mine. Mm-hmm. Mike Will made it. I think he's a great producer. You know, guys like Metro Boomin. Mm-hmm. A lot of these producers that are out now, you know, are definitely people I still, you know, pay attention to. You know, and a lot of, you know, to keep your sound current, I think you need to know what other people are doing. So while I don't model my music after other producers, I think there's certain sounds that you need to have in your music so that people can hear it and say, well, I can hear that on the radio. So I always try to pay attention to what other producers are doing and little tricks of the trade that they might incorporate into their music, and maybe I'll decide, you know, I think this is something that I can put in my music and whatnot. So I think always staying educated on what other people are doing, you know, it's a good way to, you know, kind of incorporate that into your own music. So.
Okay, yeah, because, you know, I noticed that in the different, like every 5 years, the sound of music changed, and you start seeing like a lot of producers. They don't have, because you can always tell each producer what they sound like. Maybe they have like a type of snare or a type of drum that they use.
Definitely.
They follow that same, like the same. Like, for example, crunk music back in the early 2000s was big. You know, you had a lot of, you know, producers not doing the same sound, but they was going in that same, like that same avenue. Like, they try to follow it, but what they own, you know, what they own tune and stuff like that. So,
definitely.
Dudda Dash, before we started the podcast, before we started recording, you said that you and AF played sports. What sports did y'all play?
Man, we played basketball, football, tennis, golf. We played a lot of sports. That our whole family that's what we do. We like to play sports, and you know, we're very competitive. We like to compete. Mm-hmm. So even when it comes to music, if we throw on if AF throws on an instrumental, we might have a competition who could write a better, you know, chorus or hook. And it's just, that's how we are. We're just competitive, and we like to compete. And sports was always a part of that. My dad, you know, taught me a bunch of sports. His dad was great in baseball and a whole bunch of other sports. So that's just what we do. We're just competitive.
Definitely.
Yeah, because I always say that sports is like, you know, it helps people. You know, you may not, like, for example, you could be in like middle school, high school, even college. You may not go pro, but like sports always been like that thing that just help you with communication, with teamwork, with hard work, and
exactly.
Dedication. So like John, like with both of y'all, like y'all, you know, y'all doing music. You know, y'all didn't go pro in sports, but y'all went pro in music. And y'all took that same aspects from sports into music, and look at y'all, like y'all building like y'all have your own brand, y'all have a buzz, you know. So, you know, I always say sports is something that I will always love to encourage, you know, kids to do, because it will help them in the long run.
Exactly.
Definitely. Agreed.
Even in music is competitive too. So
yeah.
it's the same thing. So I mean, we have a different sound, but we also want to compete with it. I'm not just competing with people that's from Connecticut. I'm trying to